this is Jeff Kober, and we welcome you to Disney Insights. Well, I've been asked many times, how do you plan a trip to Disneyland? This time, the request came from my wife's brother and his wife, along with their son. So, hey, Blaine, Carrie, and Justice, this one's for you. But it's for anyone who really wants to know how to best manage a stay at Disneyland. And I give great consideration to how folks who are used to visiting Walt Disney World might take this on. So, hey, John, Lori, this is also for you. And then we have our regular visitors, folks who come every year or few to Disneyland. Hopefully, there's something here for you as well. I'm talking to you, Drew. At any rate, all said and done, let's talk about not only all the details of planning a trip to the Disneyland Resort, but how to maximize your days in the park. And let's consider the most fiscally responsible way to do this, maybe. I think you'll find this podcast to be perhaps your best preparation for visiting the happiest place on earth. It's a magical, all-encompassing, less painful, and more affordable way to tour the Disneyland Resort. And it comes with decades, maybe too many to name. So let's head to Disneyland. Know that this podcast is produced by myself and Performance Journeys, which offers training, development, and consultant support to organizations big and small and to entrepreneurs new and established. With a wide variety of resources and long time in the trench experience, we offer keynotes, workshops, online learning, coaching, and so much more to organizations who want to build and develop their teams, improve organizational excellence, develop leadership, and create customer loyalty. So, hey, check us out at performancejourneys.com. And please support us by not only subscribing to this podcast, but offering up a rating, review, or referral to others. Be sure to check out Disney Insights, where we offer key points, photos, videos, links. We have charts from this podcast that you're going to want to reference about attractions. Check it all out at DisneyInsights.com. And then over at our YouTube page, which is also named Disney Insights, we carry our podcast as well. So please subscribe to our Disney Insights YouTube page, as it, along with hundreds of Disney videos from the parks, it's all going to be part of our social media strategy moving forward. And we welcome any positive thoughts and comments on YouTube when you go to visit. Well, without further ado, let's head to Anaheim and let's talk about, let's begin with when do you go to visit? With 52 weeks in a year, it's kind of hard to say exactly which week to attend. Since we're in Halloween season, I can't emphasize how much fun it is to spend Halloween at Disneyland. Unfortunately, if you haven't purchased tickets to Disney California Adventure's Oogie Boogie Bash, you're probably out of luck. It's a great event, probably on a scale even much better than Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween. But that said, you still, if you go this time of year, get a heavy dose of theming not only there, but over at Disneyland Park. And that includes the chance to enjoy the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay at the Haunted Mansion. And I got to tell you, even if you're not big on the film Nightmare Before Christmas, the whole redoing of the Haunted Mansion is so uber cool. It is just fantastic. And that overlay of that attraction continues through Christmas season, Nightmare Before Christmas. And that season itself is total joyous. I've mentioned in previous podcasts how amazing the holidays are. Episodes 532, 533, and there's not a need for a nighttime event ticket to even enjoy it. It's all part of the regular ticket. It's not like Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. You actually will get to enjoy it if you just visit the park during these times of years. And that includes a great big Christmas parade at Disneyland. Of course, things get a little bit crowded right around the holidays, but before and after, maybe the first couple of weeks in December after Thanksgiving, and then usually about 7 or 10 days after the first of the year, they keep it up a little longer so you can still enjoy the magic, sometimes right after the New Year's Day. That can be a great time to visit as well. Just check the calendar to make sure. In fact, when you do, consider the fact that weekends can be heavier with locals visiting. Mm, I'm guessing about 80% of those who come to the resort are from California. There are lots of annual pass holders, and they like to come on weekends, and they like to come after 5 o'clock any day of the week. That's probably one of the reasons why we're going to emphasize how important it is to get there earlier in the day. The park simply gets heavier as the day gets on. In between, though, between Christmas and all the other times that we mentioned, there are special events during the year, such as themed events to have Valentine's Day, Star Wars, grad night, and more. You're going to want to check your calendar. Note that summertime is really Disneyland's best time for doing it all, with August being a little bit more crowded out west than June or July. Still, it's a busy season, unlike how Walt Disney World kind of has started to drop off during the very heavy, hot, humid time of year here in Florida. It is hot in California during the summer, but it's much more passable and doable. And in fact, evenings can still be quite cool. But the most important date that you want to remember is that Disneyland's 70th anniversary is running between now and the end of summer 2026. I covered all of the glorious stuff about the 70th in episode 565. But what I'm trying to tell you is whenever you go, you will find something of the celebration going on. Off season, the fireworks may be a little bit more on weekends, but there are lots of other entertainment and offerings and theming and celebration going on between holidays and special events. So between now and end of summer 2026 is the time to go to Disneyland. And our itinerary realizes that some days are going to be more crowded, some days are going to be less, but you're going to get the best bang for the buck taking the approaches that we're going to talk about a little later. Let's also talk a little bit before we get into the parks about lodging and travel. Now, the ideal at Walt Disney World is to stay at the Walt Disney World Resort, right? The same would be true of the Disneyland Resort, but there's only 3 hotels, few of them, and they're frankly majorly expensive. Currently, guests staying at those 3 hotels get early entry, which is a half hour early before general entry for guests staying at the other hotels. But all that is going to end early in 2026. That's to your advantage if you're not staying on property. Otherwise, staying in the bubble is your only reason for staying at those 3 hotels. They're fantastic hotels. One you can take a monorail to the parks. One you backdoor at Grand California right into Disney California Adventure. The other not far away by foot. They're really great resorts, but you do pay a serious price to do so, to stay there. The good news is that Disneyland is surrounded with lots of great lodging choices, and many closer than the distance you would walk from Disney's Grand Californian to Magic Kingdom. I like Howard Johnson's, especially across the park, and I have great memories of that resort. If you belong to any Hotel Point group, you'll find choices up along Harbor and Catella, and many within a short walking distance. I'm long-term Marriott, and there are many choices for me near or far. If you're driving to Disneyland, expect to pay a parking fee at your hotel. If you drive to Disneyland itself, expect to pay a parking fee when you get there at the parks. And gas is crazy expensive in California, so all that kind of builds up. But you save by not flying if you could travel from Arizona or Utah or from a neighboring state, Northern California, and so forth. Because of distance for me, I fly, and I find it really smart to take Uber or Lyft not only from the airport, but back and forth from my hotel. That way I save time, I walk less, and I save much more. They drop you off really right at the entrance to Disneyland off of Harbor Boulevard. I find it to be a great deal. Now, speaking of travel, if you are driving a car to the Disneyland parks themselves and not walking from your hotel, I recommend Toy Story parking lot over Mickey and Friends / Pixar Pals parking lot. The former, you get on a bus kind of away from the parks, and you get on a bus to head over, and it's slightly longer in travel period by a minute or two. The latter, on the trams, takes less time. But the time taken to get into a parking spot and the time getting to the bus or getting to the tram is longer with Mickey and Friends, Pixar Pals, that whole structure. Worse is heading home at night, where long lines build up for the tram at downtown Disney, and then out of the parking structure, you got to get in a long line to get out of there. It's just much bigger mess than Toy Story parking. I prefer Toy Story parking and would seriously recommend it if you are driving to the actual park itself. Now, for length of stay, I'm either addressing in this podcast the family who comes every few years, the well-visited Walt Disney World fan who wants to see, well, what it's like out west, or the big Disney fan who comes more often and wants to do it all. In those arenas, there are a couple of issues here. First, Walt Disney World to Disneyland is an apple-oranges comparison. Disneyland Park itself takes more time than any park in Walt Disney World, but is smaller than most of them. Disney California Adventure takes up about as much time as Disney's Hollywood Studios or Disney's Animal Kingdom, though smaller than that latter park. True, some attractions like Mickey's Filler Magic or Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run are nearly the same in both parks and probably don't need to be attended to if you've already seen them many times out in Orlando. But there are many things in both parks that are not at Walt Disney World, particularly in terms of entertainment and theming, and that also will take up your time. Those with those who do not have smaller children can do much more if they utilize single rider passes. And there are major attractions to take advantage of offering this, especially at Disney California Adventure. We'll show that later. Families with small children, well, that's like families with small children at Walt Disney World. You need to modify your expectations, Mom and Dad. You can't do it all with smaller kids, or they don't fit the height requirement to do so anyway. In those cases, you forego some things or you do a trade-off that you might not need to do it. In truth, this itinerary will work for you that we're going to showcase for you if and only if you're being realistic about what small children can and can't do in a day. For tickets and media, what I'm covering today suggests that you should spend at least 3 days to cover both parks. The two parks at Disneyland Resort technically has more rides and attractions than all 4 Walt Disney World parks. Mind you, they have less sit-down cinematic theatrical attractions and less character meet and greet experiences than Walt Disney World. We'll cover more of that later. But they do have lots of rides at those 2 parks. And I'm suggesting 2 days in Disneyland and 1 day in Disney California Adventure. If you can do more than that, even better. But with that, especially if you got small children, I would suggest doing more than that. If you're looking to maybe do a parent switch at a, say, Matterhorn bobsleds, let one go on it while watching the kids, then the other one goes on it, you're going to need more time. But with that, I believe your increased number of days spent will save you time having to park hop and utilize lightning lanes. Let's talk about park hopping, then let's talk about lightning lanes. Park hopping. What's great about park hopping is that the 2 parks are so adjacent to each other. You just go across a plaza. It's so much better than Walt Disney World. And there is a sense to this if you're only able to spend a day in the 2 parks altogether. Maybe you're on a conference and you only have 1 extra day from a convention you're attending or something like that. Otherwise, probably it makes sense to save the money and don't park hop. That said, there is also an expense and it takes considerable time and tired shoe energy to, say, go from Haunted Mansion to Radiator Springs Racers in the other park, I just don't really recommend it. But I would use it more than the Lightning Lanes. Per person, park hopping is like $65, $75 for 1 day, $80 for 2 days, $90 for 3 days. It's not the end of the world per person, but honestly, I think you're just going to spend a lot of time walking. You don't need to do more than what you need. And I'm already going to suggest a very big itinerary that begins where you open the park and you close the park. So I don't want you to overdo it. I would suggest not bothering with the park hopping. Save the money. Take yourself out to a nice meal. Now, Lightning Lane. There are several options to include Lightning Lane Multi-Pass, Lightning Lane Single Pass, Lightning Lane Premier Pass, and then VIP Tours. Very similar in most ways to the Walt Disney World plan. Let me just quickly cover these. This is, for many people, if you remember Fast Pass or Genie, this is what they use for this. In the Lightning Lane Multi-Pass, you get to go on many of the most popular attractions. You pay about $30 a day. It might go up to about a third more during peak periods. With it, you do get Lightning Lanes to both parks. You get access to both parks with the Lightning Lane or using Lightning Lane in both parks. There are no re-rides on this system. It does include Photo Pass as well as on-ride photos. That's a bargain. You cannot actually join Lightning Lane or book your attractions until you're actually in the park. That actually is in your favor, but notwithstanding, that is a factor that's a little different than Walt Disney World. You may want to wait until you see how popular attractions are before you take advantage of the system. Like Walt Disney World, you can stack Lightning Lanes. Unlike Walt Disney World, there are really no character meet and greet choices that you can utilize. With Lightning Lane Single Pass, for Disneyland, for the Lightning Lane Single Pass, that means you could pay 30, 35, 40, somewhere in that neighborhood for either Star Wars Rise of the Resistance or for, in Disney California Adventure, this is Radiator Springs Racers. You don't have to get the multi-pass to be able to get a single pass for either one of these two. That is something to consider, but I offer ways to get around that might work for you. Then there's Lightning Lane Premier Pass. This can be purchased in advance. This is around $300, $400 a person. Insights. You can modify your times during the stay even sooner than the time you show if you spend enough time with it. You can book your next one as soon as your arrival time commences. You can always show up 5 times prior to your arrival time. But my belief is this, and this is the long and short of Lightning Lanes, and you may want to check it out further. But my belief is this: if you've planned your day really well, and I'm going to provide that for you, and you're planning on enough time to visit the characters, or to visit the parks, you probably don't need any of this. I said characters. I was jumping ahead because I do want to talk for a moment about characters. Unlike Walt Disney World, there are really very few places you, quote, line up to see Disney characters. Mickey and Minnie in Toontown. Tinkerbell has a special place in Fantasyland as well as a one for princesses. But don't worry. The Disney characters, they're all around. They tend to roam the park and caveat about. So when you're in a particular area, look up for characters you might see. Around Plaza Gardens, Snow White's Wishing Well, the Carousel, Fantasyland Theater, you are very likely to run into someone. You can look at the app and see when they're out and about, and just go look for them. You will find them, and it's really quite casual and fun. You don't have to wait in long lines. You just come join the excitement of it all. Entertainment. Let's talk about this. Disneyland, we talked about already having a lot of rides and attractions. It also has great entertainment. But that portfolio leans more toward nighttime entertainment than daytime. That's largely because locals come after work. Even one of their daytime parades, when they're running it in either park, will likely have a run during the late afternoon hours, say 4:35, 5:30. With all that evening entertainment, it's hard to do it all because there's so much to see of the entertainment. And lines for attractions are more manageable during these times, although, again, you've got a lot of locals who have come out during that time. But know that really, if you don't go to Disneyland very often, you're going to want to plan a big chunk of your time, particularly at night, for entertainment. Food. Let's talk about food. Disneyland has some great sit-down dining, full-service dining options. The Blue Bayou, Carnation Cafe, Lamplight Lounge, and the Carthay Circle restaurant, big favorite of mine. They all stand out. Even Disney's Grand Californian Signature Restaurant. It's the California Grill version of Disneyland. It's called the Napa Rose. It sits overlooking Grizzly Peak at the edge of the park. But there are not as many sit-down full-service dining options at Walt Disney World, and reservations for these are tight. You're going to want to look for them in advance. Also, many locals come into the park toward dinner, and your options even become more limited at mobile ordering locations if you haven't ordered well in advance. In other words, you may just want to consider, as you're heading back to your hotel for a break in the afternoon, to think about where you want to dine that evening. And even if it's a mobile service, make that mobile service. You can always cancel it. You can always move it around, but don't say it's 6 o'clock in the evening, I think we'll go get a bite to eat. You're not going to be able to use mobile ordering, and a lot of food actually ends up being unavailable after certain hours. So, and Walt Disney World's a little guilty of this too. After 8 p.m., there's not a lot of options open for just having a sit-down place to go grab a bite to eat. But all that said and done, Disneyland's forte is snacks. From Dole Whips to churros, and especially my favorite, macarons. Oh, I love the macarons at Disneyland. And there are so many other choices there. The peanut brittle at the Candy Palace. There's just so many fun things to do. The ice cream. There's a Ghirardelli's. You know how you have one at Disney Springs? Theirs is in Disney California Adventure. Kill me off. That is so wonderful to get Ghirardelli ice cream in the middle of the day in a park. Food, Disney does really well. The only thing I'm going to suggest is you might want to think it through and order in advance or make reservations in advance if you're attending. Then souvenirs. The best option is to do your shopping along Main Street or Buena Vista Street as you head back to your hotel for an afternoon break, which I'm going to recommend. Specialty shopping such as Avengers, Star Wars, or other items are best found near their respective attractions. But most everything else can be found at the entrance to the park. Oh, and also at World of Disney, at Downtown Disney, the big World of Disney, just like Disney Springs. So those are options that you can consider. Now, given all of that, now let's get into possible itineraries. First off, suppose you're getting into town and maybe it's late afternoon or dinner time. Consider heading over to Downtown Disney and enjoy the evening there. Downtown Disney is somewhat sandwiched between Disneyland, Disney California Adventure, and then the Disneyland hotels. So it is just all together. You don't take a bus out to go get to it or anything from one of the parks. It's just walkable, all within. In fact, it all is within the same security bubble. So it makes it really quite convenient and enjoyable. You can even stand in the plaza between Disney California Adventure and Disneyland and see the fireworks from that area over at Disneyland if they're having fireworks that night. And while there, you can find lots of great formal and informal dining options, plus shopping. So, and by the way, you can also check out the official Disney hotels nearby. They have some dining options and some great shopping, and it's just really all fun to check out. So if you got an evening free or maybe a morning before you catch late afternoon flight. There's just ways you can utilize downtown Disney. Now, let's talk about the actual days you spend in Disneyland and in Disney California Adventure. I want to talk about attraction considerations, which, by the way, is very similar to Walt Disney World, but I probably not articulated them as well as I will here. There are factors that influence when you ride a certain attraction. And those 5 factors, 4 plus 1 kind of, first is popularity. Which rides does everyone want to ride? If they're really popular, there's obviously going to be a longer line, right? Second, time of day. How many guests are in the park and are awaiting attractions? Time of day matters at the parks. Capacity. Theater attractions are great. Peter Pan's Flight and Matterhorn bobsleds are awful. Omnimovers are pretty steady. Pirates of the Caribbean seats, a great many, but Storybook Canal boats, not so many. So you have to look at the capacity of it. Then you talk about vehicle and personnel availability. The submarines, Jungle Cruise, the railroad, Big Thunder, Star Tours, and Storybook Land Canal boats are all examples of attractions that kind of ramp up and they ramp down on their availability. For instance, they might start Storybook Canal boats with just 2 boats. They'll eventually get to 6 or 7 boats, but they start out maybe with 2. So you really don't save a lot of time by doing that the very first thing, because the line's going to be long waiting for the 1 or 2 boats to come back. And it won't be any different than when you have to wait in a longer line for one of the 7 boats to come back. So you want to kind of be aware of these things. And I'm going to help you figure out how to do this. Star Tours is another example. There are 4. There's 6 at Disney Hollywood Studios, but at Disneyland there are 4 vehicles, so to speak, simulators to go on. But sometimes they only start with 2 and then they ramp up. So the length of time at 8:30 in the morning may be the same length of time as 10 o'clock in the morning. So you want to be kind of aware of that. And then the final thing, it's just a little thing, but a potential for breakdown. This is largely with a few rare and newer attractions. This was a big problem with Rise. But downtime creates longer lines when the attraction later goes back online. It also jeopardizes your ability to maybe get on the ride at all. So those are things to consider. Good news, I've already considered those. And based on those factors, I've provided some charts outlined for both Disneyland and Disney California Adventure. The red column is for very popular and or low capacity attractions. Yellow is based more on time of day, vehicle and personnel availability. And green is for higher capacity, theatrical experiences, or greater vehicle availability and or lower popularity. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. Let's take Adventureland. Indiana Jones Adventure, other than the first hour or so in the morning, hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning, maybe the very last hour of the day, Indiana Jones Adventure is going to be very popular and full of people getting in line and lots of people trying to take advantage of their lightning lane. It can be crazy crowded. That said, and by the way, it still sometimes will break down more than other attractions. And so that then creates a bigger line later on and so forth. So I put that in the red. The Jungle Cruise can be heavy at certain times of the day. In fact, from 10 until 6, it can be pretty heavy. It also can only end up having 4 boats maybe running in the first hour or the last hour of the day. Maybe they even close a little early. Sometimes they'll do that at Walt Disney World. But there are certain hours where you can get on and not wait very long, much more than 20 minutes to get on the attraction. So I put it in the yellow. Meanwhile, in the green, Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. It's easy. You just walk in for the next show. Adventureland Treehouse, you can go up anytime you want to experience that. And so I put that in the green. Similar things can be found in New Orleans Square. Haunted Mansion. Well, let me give Haunted Mansion I put in the red. Disneyland Railroad and Pirates of the Caribbean I put in yellow. And then Pirates Lair at Tom Sawyer Island, typically in the green. It's usually not too long a wait. When you go over to Disney California Adventure, let's give another example of this. Pixar Pier. Incredicoaster, very popular. It's a great roller coaster. Traditional looking roller coaster, but really well done and smooth and fun. But it is in the red column, as is Toy Story Midway Mania, which can get busy and can utilize a lot of people using lightning lines. Pixar Pal Around, it's not, in terms of the number of people wanting to go on it, as popular as the other two I just mentioned, but it takes a lot of time to load people on and to move people on. And so while the line doesn't look big, the line may be moving really slow. I put all those in red. Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind, which is a spinner style attraction, I put into the yellow category. It can often be very easy to get on during the first 2.5 hours of the morning and later in the afternoon after World of Color. Then it gets a little busier during the rest of the day. But then Games of Pixar Pier, you'll never have to wait. It's usually just almost a walk-on. So those kinds of things are things to consider. Again, when you go to DisneyInsights.com, you are going to see that I've created these charts, and they will give you a sense. But beyond that, I'm also going to give you an itinerary. Now, mind you, before I do so, let me just say this. None of the itineraries I'm going to give you removes waiting in line. If you don't want to wait in line, then probably lightning lanes are your best bet. There will be some of that if you take my itinerary. But this itinerary suggests a prioritization that will guarantee the least amount of waiting and maybe a little bit of least amount of walking without utilizing lightning lane possibilities and all the cost that comes with that. And sometimes, if you're not really good at lightning lanes, you don't know how to stack, if you stack your lightning lanes, which means you take them but you don't really use them at the time, you do other things while you keep stacking them up for a later time, usually in the afternoon. That's all great, but then that means you don't get a break in the afternoon, and so the day becomes a little bit longer. I've given you a break in the middle of the day on these itineraries and did it without having to use lightning lanes, paying for that. So let's take a look at what a 3-day itinerary might look like at Disneyland. Let's start with Disneyland Park on day 1. Usually the park often opens at 8 a.m. Be in the park well in advance of this hour. You're going to understand why in a few minutes, but you want to be there at rope drop. Now remember, I kind of mentioned earlier that there is currently an advanced rope drop for those staying at Disneyland Resort Hotel. After the first of the next year, that's not going to be the case. But if you're at the front of this rope drop, for those who are not staying at those hotels, and if there's no advance entry by Disneyland Resort Hotel guests, you might try Peter Pan. If you're at the front of that, and then you come right on into Fantasyland, you find out, oh, wait a minute, there are already people who've been there for 30 minutes, and there's a big line already there. So I would recommend, if there's already somebody preceding you in this advanced entry, I would veer right toward Alice in Wonderland and ride that attraction. Afterwards, ride Snow White's Enchanted Tales, Dumbo's Flying Elephants, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and keep an eye out for Storybook Land canal boats. If enough boats are in operation and the queue is moving, go on it. Otherwise, go over to Casey Jr. because you're going to get the same experience. At times, look back. If Peter Pan is less than 30 minutes after its first or second wave of guests who have gone on it, consider going on it. Then you need to move on about 9:15. Now, you're probably saying to me, wait a minute. These are not the big attractions I want to go on. I want to do all these other things. I understand that. But these are the slowest boarding attractions in the park, and you can get through 4, 5, or 6 within the first hour plus. And that is going to work in your favor, because after you do all those other attractions, you're going to say, well, I wanted to also still do one of these. And you're going to find very long lines later in the day. So trust me when I say, and by the way, if you got children, this is also going to be important for them. Focus on this part of the park in the first hour and plus. Around 9:15, move over to Big Thunder Mountain. Big Thunder Mountain usually only begins with a train or two at the beginning. But by the time you get there, there should be at least 3 trains running now, and the queue should move quickly, and you won't wait in any longer time frame than you did if you had gone right at rope drop. From there, I would go to Indiana Jones Adventure. This is a high capacity attraction, though it does break down. So because of that, you're more likely to get on it first thing in the morning when it's working well and hasn't broken down yet. Then move over to Jungle Cruise, which capacity, like canal boats or Big Thunder's trains, is going to increase with attendance. That would be around the 10 o'clock, 10:30 hour. You should be able to, you may be in a 20-minute line or so, but it's going to move very quickly because they've got a lot of boats. Then you're going to move on to the Haunted Mansion, Winnie the Pooh's Many Adventures, and then come back to Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates has a huge capacity. You may want to grab a snack along the way through all this, beignets over in New Orleans or any number of really great snacks out there. Then at about 11, a little after 11, at this point, if you've done all these things, you've accomplished some 10 to 12 attractions, including some very popular rides and attractions in the park. You might at this point check out the canoes, which, let me just tell you, the canoes take a little bit of effort, muscle effort, but they are so much fun. It is a memorable experience. Pirate's Lair at Tom Sawyer Island is perfect for little kids who want to run around. The Columbia and the Mark Twain, those are all possible choices at this time. Adventureland Treehouse is nearby. It's another option in this area. Then around 12 noon, grab lunch in this corner of the park, and there are lots of choices over here, especially in New Orleans. And then if you want to do Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is a water ride and will likely get you much more wet than if you did it at Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, because the logs are different and the flow and the engineering is different, you may want to consider utilizing a single rider pass. It will be available if your party can do that. Obviously, if you got small children, you don't do a single rider pass. You don't want to leave anyone younger than 9 in, or maybe not even 12, depending on how you feel about your child. You don't want to let them just sit all by themselves. But if your family is capable of doing it, take advantage of single rider pass. You will likely, even if you throw on some things to ponchos and whatnot, you're probably going to be pretty wet. You're going to want to grab the train back to Main Street and head back to your hotel if you're drier, or if you opted not to do Tiana's because you don't care for that, you might just take that train back to Main Street and visit Walt Disney A Magical Life and or do some shopping. This is a great time to do shopping. So, any rate, by 1:30, you should be heading back and taking a break at the hotel. Go swimming, take a nap, whatever it takes, do both. But take some time for yourself, because I'm recommending you get there early, and I'm also recommending you stay late. So take advantage of the break. At 4:30 or so, return to the park. If there's a parade at Disneyland, not currently happening, a daytime parade, take in the later showing. Usually there's one around 2 or 3, and then another between 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that neighborhood. You're going to want to do an earlier dinner, and there's some really great, meatier choices. For instance, if you go to Plaza Inn, they have their famous fried chicken. Rancho Zocalo, if you love Mexican food, that's a great choice. Or maybe if you want something a little more casual, Golden Horseshoe. I love Jolly Holiday Bakery. Did I say macarons? Make sure you advance order this dinner, because they may be out of macarons by that time. I also had done this little thing, Tropical Hideaway behind Enchanted Tiki Room and Bengal Barbecue across from the Jungle Cruise. They each have great choices. I send one person to go get stuff over at Bengal Barbecue. Another person goes to get stuff at Tropical Hideaway. Then you just have a big seat there. There's plenty of seating at either location. Great place to just have an early dinner before the crowds in that come in and wipe you out. And then you may want to check out the Enchanted Tiki Room and or visit other attractions that maybe you had missed earlier in Adventureland and Frontierland. Now around 7:30 p.m., check out the evening entertainment to include the nighttime parade if available at Disneyland, which is Paint the Night amazing. Fantasmic is also pretty impressive and different than Walt Disney World's. And then the fireworks, if they are available that evening. Note that if you are seeing the fireworks, that from Fantasmic, you can actually stand to see the fireworks from there. So that's very cool. Then around 9 to 10 p.m., again, depending on when the park's closing, you're going to head to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Now, this is a mirror of the one at Walt Disney World, so you may just say, I don't need this, and that's fine. You can go do something else. But for many of you, you may have not even done it, or you haven't done it much, and you really want to see this. Maybe you're a big Star Wars fan. Head to Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Guess what? They utilize a single rider pass. Take advantage. That is possible because of the lateness of the day and where that location is in the park. The attendance is much lower that time of day. You can take in the rest of the land until about 5 or 10 minutes before closing when you get in line for Rise of the Resistance. I say take on Rise of the Resistance 5 or 10 minutes before closing because once the park closes, you can get on any minute before it closes. You can afterwards. And that includes those with lightning lanes or VIP tours or special passes or whatever. The ride, the line, the queue, it may have been 60 minutes. Heaven forbid, but it may have been 60 minutes at the time you got on. But let me tell you, it will go very, very quickly. I have gone all the way through that queue in less than 20, 25 minutes when all those other factors are not entering the queue anymore. So you can go get onto Rise of the Resistance much easier during that time. Now, of course, by the time you're heading out, you are wearily making your way back to your hotel. So you're pretty exhausted at this point. That's why taking a break in the middle of the day is so important because it's so heavy. The attendance is heavy. The temperature, if it's summer, may be heavy. You just want to get a break in the middle of the day. We're going to do the same thing for Disney California Adventure on your second day. There are far less attractions to take on at DCA, Disney California Adventure. But there are also less hours in the day. And the problem is that less attractions actually means more people in the queue. The good news is that 6 major attractions in this park all utilize single rider. Useful as long as you don't have small children. Again, many of these attractions don't accept small children. If you still want to do them and so forth, that's all the more reason why you may need more than 3 days to get through the park with small children, to give yourself and the kids a break and make it more manageable. However, and maybe that's when you want to consider, utilizing a park hopper later on, which I'll talk about. But here, and again, 8 a.m., we've got a rope drop for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. This is not Guardians of the Galaxy like at Epcot. This is a whole different beast that looks a little bit more like a Tower of Terror. And it is, because it's based on the original Tower of Terror. It is a totally cool ride, but the lines are not friendly most of the day. So you want to be there at rope drop. Do Soarin' if you don't want to do the drops of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Either way, when you're done with either, move on to Web Slingers. And there, blessedly, there is a single rider at Web Slingers. So helpful. Otherwise, you're in a very long wait. At 9 a.m., if you're utilizing single rider, then go do Toy Story Midway Mania first, and then come back to Incredicoaster, which is single rider, then Emotional Whirlwind, Silly Symphony Swings, and then single rider on Goofy Sky School, again, single rider. Then backtrack to Pixar Pal Around. If you're not going to do single rider, do Incredicoaster first, then do Toy Story Midway Mania, Pixar Pal Around, Goofy Sky School, and the remainder of the attractions of your choosing. This may be another place where you have a snack along the way. Now, this is going to take you to about 11 a.m. And mind you, Not all of those things are things you want to do. And so that's what's probably going to make that more manageable. But most of those, and perhaps all of those, you're going to be able to do between 9 a.m. and about 11 a.m. Because at 11 a.m., you're going to head back to Radiator Springs and take on Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters and Mater's Junkyard Jamboree. And then Radiator Springs Racers if you are utilizing a single rider. This is a real blessing. I'll have another option if you're not doing single rider, but this is the time to do it at 11 a.m. You don't want to just get in the standby line at 11 a.m. at Radiator Springs Racer at 11. That's not good. But if you're a single rider, it's reasonable at that point. And then, by the way, that single rider still may mean about a 25, 30-minute wait. But it's so much better than what everybody else is experiencing. Trust me on that. 12:30, you want to grab some lunch. You could do Flo's right there in Radiator Springs, or right next door, very proximate, is San Francisco. There are some really great options there, and I have come to love the restaurants all the more there. There's choices in Chinese, Mexican, bread bowls, the famous Disneyland bread bowl with clam chowder in it. Take advantage of all that. Then about 2 p.m., take on Soarin' and or Grizzly River Run. Again, that's a single rider before you return to the hotel. Younger children can take on the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail or the Disney Junior Dance Party or attractions in the animation building. But by 3 p.m., start heading back to your hotel for a break. You're doing your break a little later here. At 6 p.m., you're going to come back. You're going to take on dinner and the Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure, which honestly is just like the one in Magic Kingdom. You can, as well as Mickey's Filler Magic. You might want to miss those if you're familiar with them at Walt Disney World. You may want to take in Monsters Incorporated or any other attraction which you didn't do earlier that you wish you had done. So that's your time frame from around 6 p.m. Around 8 p.m., take on the World of Color and or Radiator Springs Racers if you didn't do single rider earlier. Remember how I talked about Rise of the Resistance, getting in line 5 or 10 minutes before closing? You want to do that there. You might there are places where you can stand to see World of Color. I definitely think you should see that if you haven't seen it. But it is a longer show, and if time is of the essence and you haven't done Radiator Springs Racers, which you definitely need to do, you might just check it in from the bridge or from kind of outside the group areas. See it for about 5, 10, 15 minutes. The show tends to be a little long, like 20, 25, 30. Leave that beforehand and make sure you get to Radiator Springs Racers right before closing. And if you, especially if you haven't done single rider, although at night to do it again is so worth it because it's a whole different feel in the nighttime of that section of the park. And then on your way out of the park, go ahead and do some shopping on your way home. Okay, you hanging with me still? We're now at Disneyland Park again for day 3. If you have felt like the crowds were so heavy on prior days and you just couldn't do all the things we talked about, I would be surprised, but it might happen, especially if you came on a heavy day. This might be a good time to consider that Lightning Lane pass. But otherwise, I think you're going to get through the rest of the attractions without needing so. Because at 8 a.m., again, rope drop, you're going to head to Space Mountain. And then you're going to head to Finding Nemo's submarine ride, which, again, starts with a couple of submarines and builds up. But you don't want to wait too long. This is a very slow boarding attraction, and it's a very cool one. It's similar in technology to the one at the Seas at Epcot, but it is a submarine ride, and it is very cool, and it's a lot of fun. I definitely would recommend it. Then you might do Autopia, their version of the Raceway. Backtrack to Astro Orbiter, the Star Tours, which is, again, identical to Walt Disney World. And then Buzz Lightyear, a little better than the one at Walt Disney World, but they're making changes there. At 9:30 a.m., head to Matterhorn bobsleds, taking advantage again of single rider. Know that the bobsleds carriage is similar to the Space Mountain carriage at Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. They are painful to anyone's back. But if you love coasters, this is the original steel coaster, and Matterhorn bobsleds is for you. Then you want to go on to Toontown, to Chippendale Gadget Coaster, Go Coaster, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, and do this in order, by the way, and then Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I'm putting them in order because of their ability to load the number of guests. And then go back and visit It's a Small World. That's going to take you till about 11:30 a.m., at which point you may want to return to Fantasyland to do any attractions you haven't done, to include Sleeping Beauty Castle Walkthrough, Mad Tea Party, Carousel, or Pinocchio's, or maybe any of the others we mentioned the other day for the first day. Take on any daytime entertainment like the band, enjoy lunch, see the characters. At 1 p.m., return to your hotel. You might also, in this situation, get on the monorail in Tomorrowland, take it to downtown Disney, and do shopping in that area. You could do lunch right before you get on the monorail, or find a place to grab lunch in downtown Disney. What I have often done is taken an Uber Lyft from the Disneyland Hotel or Disney's Grand Californian back to my hotel, and I've really been able to kind of enjoy that little experience without having to do long lines and lots of walking and so forth. At 4 p.m., you're going to follow the same plan as Disneyland Day 1 with, again, an emphasis on entertainment. You did Fantasmic on one day. You're going to do Paint the Night Parade on the second day, or something, some combination of that. You may want to do attractions you still miss or attractions you want to repeat. You may want to go back to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and take in Rise. Maybe Rise failed to be open at the end of the day or something. Take any time. Or if you did end up doing a park hopper, when you come back and forth, go back to DCA and enjoy that until closing time there, 8 or 9, and then return back to Disneyland Park when DCA closes. There's lots of options there, but know that by this time, at the end of 3 days, you will have had a chance to really encompass and take on all of the attractions you want to take on at Disneyland and Disney California Adventure. So, by now, I have given you the best way and most affordable way to enjoy the 2 parks in 3 days and to pretty well see it all. Your experience may differ. You may be a little overwhelmed by everything I've talked about here. You may want to reach out to David and Leah with Zenola Travel, because they know Disneyland as well, and they could do a lot to help you with those hotel reservations, sorting through tickets, what days to visit the park, and so forth. You might want to check out Zenola Travel. They're in our show notes. But hopefully you've had a chance to, and by the way, go back to DisneyInsights.com. The charts that I talked about, you may want to print those out. The itineraries, you may want to print those out. Those are all available to you at DisneyInsights.com. And that'll give you a good overview of, again, a good outline to follow as you go through the parks. Well, thank you for joining us for this podcast. It's been a big one. And I just want to remind you again, this is sponsored by Performance Journeys. You may want to check out some of my books, A Century of Powerful Disney Insights, 100 Years with the Walt and Roy Disney Years, The Wonderful World of Customer Service at Disney, and Disney Leadership in You. If you think I know something about going to the parks, you should see what I know about the business of the parks. And you should see what I know about how to help businesses like yours succeed. Public, private, nonprofit sector. I can offer you a whole lot of possibilities, whether it's consulting, keynotes, workshops, seminars, online tools, and so forth. Again, check us out at performancejourneys.com. And thanks for joining us for this podcast. Know that is in the title of Performance Journeys. It's as much about the journey as it is about performance. So, hey, find the second star to the right, even if you have to wait in line for a few minutes, and then keep going straight or keep going around the queue until you reach it. Follow the compass of your heart and know that with a smile and a song, Snow White's, a little faith, effort, and pixie dust, Pinocchio, your dreams can come true. After all, If we can dream it, we can do it. Until next time, bright suns from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We'll see ya real soon.